Hello, everyone, and welcome back to IntelligentPod, your favorite place for deep dives into the science behind how we think, feel, and live. I'm your host, Sophie Lane, and today's episode is one I know so many of you have been waiting for. We're talking all about the science of habits, specifically how to break the bad ones and build good ones, with a focus on the most advanced insights psychology and neuroscience have to offer. Let's be real. Habits are the hidden architecture of our lives. Whether it's your morning coffee ritual, that endless Instagram scroll before bed, or the 10-minute meditation you keep meaning to start, habits shape our days and, over time, our destinies. But why are bad habits so sticky? And why does it feel so hard to make new habits stick? Today, we'll unpack the latest science, share some relatable stories, and I'll give you practical, actionable advice you can apply right away, no matter how stubborn your old habits are. So, if you've ever wondered why you keep reaching for that sugary snack, or why your "I'll start exercising tomorrow" plan keeps getting pushed to tomorrow, you're in exactly the right place. Let's start with a clear look at habits themselves. At its core, a habit is an automatic behavior triggered by a cue in your environment. According to research from Duke University, about 40% of our daily actions aren't conscious decisions, but habits. 40%. That means almost half of what you do every day is on autopilot. This is great news if your autopilot is taking you somewhere you want to go. Not so great if it isn't. Imagine for a second. You wake up, reach for your phone, scroll through emails, and before you know it, you're running late and skipping breakfast. Or maybe you've built a habit of lacing up your running shoes as soon as your workday ends, and now it feels weird not to run. These are both habits, but one is probably serving you better than the other. Now, let's explore why habits are so persistent and why breaking bad ones feels like pushing a boulder uphill. The answer lies in the way our brains are wired. From the scientific perspective, habits form in a part of the brain called the basal ganglia. This area is responsible for routine behaviors and motor actions. When we repeat an action in the same context, our brain starts to encode that pattern, and over time, the action becomes automatic. This is efficient for our brains. It frees up cognitive energy for more complex decisions. Unfortunately, our brains don't distinguish between good and bad habits. They just encode what we repeat. Let's bring in some numbers. A fascinating study led by Dr. Philippa Lally at University College London found that on average, it takes 66 days to form a new habit. But, and this part is important, the range was huge. For some people, it took as little as 18 days, and for others, as many as 254 days. So, if you've struggled to make a new habit stick after a month, you're not alone, and you're not failing. But what about breaking bad habits? Here's where things get interesting. The traditional wisdom was that breaking a habit is just a matter of willpower. But new research shows that willpower alone is rarely enough. Instead, you have to disrupt the habit loop. Let's talk about the habit loop, a concept popularized by Charles Duhigg in his book, The Power of Habit. The loop has 3 parts: cue, routine, and reward. The cue triggers the behavior. The routine is the behavior itself, and the reward is the benefit your brain gets, which reinforces the loop. For example, let's say you snack on chips every afternoon at work. The cue might be boredom or a slump in energy. The routine is grabbing the chips, and the reward is a brief burst of pleasure or distraction. To break this habit, you need to identify the cue and the reward, and then consciously swap in a different routine that delivers a similar reward. Maybe you take a quick walk, call a friend, or have a cup of tea instead. But let me share a real-life story that brings this science to life. I had a listener, let's call her Emily, who struggled with the habit of checking her phone late at night, which was messing with her sleep. She realized her cue was the feeling of winding down. Her routine was endless scrolling, and her reward was distraction from the day's stress. With some experimentation, Emily swapped her phone for a short journaling session. She still got to unwind and distract herself, but in a way that didn't disrupt her sleep. After about 2 months, She found herself reaching for her journal instead of her phone, automatically. Now, let's explore some advanced perspectives on habit change from psychology, neuroscience, and even cultural anthropology. From a psychological angle, one of the most powerful motivators for habit change is identity. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, talks about the idea of identity-based habits. Instead of focusing purely on outcomes, like I want to lose 10 pounds, focus on becoming the kind of person who embodies your desired habits. Like, I'm a person who exercises regularly, or I'm a mindful eater. Studies show that when we tie habits to our sense of self, we're far more likely to stick with them. Here's a fascinating academic study. In 2019, researchers at Stanford University found that framing goals in terms of identity, saying, I don't smoke, instead of I can't smoke, made people significantly more successful at resisting temptation. The difference might seem subtle, but it's profound. When a habit aligns with your identity, it's no longer a chore, it's just who you are. From a neuroscience standpoint, there's emerging evidence about the role of dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter, in habit formation. Contrary to popular belief, dopamine isn't just released when we experience pleasure, it's released in anticipation of a reward. That's why cues are so powerful. Just seeing the logo of your favorite coffee shop can trigger a dopamine spike that makes you crave a latte, even before you smell the coffee. Understanding this can help you hack your own habits. Try creating cues that make your desired habit irresistible. If you want to start running in the morning, put your shoes and workout clothes next to your bed. The visual cue can trigger anticipation and make it easier to get started. Culturally, habits don't exist in a vacuum. Our environment and social circles play a huge role. There's a reason why the world's healthiest populations, like those in the blue zones, have social norms and built environments that support healthy behaviors. In Okinawa, Japan, for example, it's normal for people to walk everywhere and eat plenty of vegetables, not because they have superhuman willpower, but because the culture makes healthy habits the default. So, what does all this mean for you? Let's get practical with some actionable strategies you can use to break bad habits and build good ones, especially if you're ready to take your habit game to the next level. First, make your cues obvious and your rewards satisfying. For forming good habits, design your environment for success. If you want to eat healthier, put a bowl of fruit on the counter and hide the junk food. If you want to read more, keep your book on your pillow. The easier you make it to start, the more likely you'll stick with it. Second, stack your habits. This is called habit stacking, and it's about linking a new habit to an existing one. For example, if you already make coffee every morning, use that as a cue to meditate for 2 minutes while it brews. Over time, the new habit piggybacks on the old one. Third, use implementation intentions. This is a fancy way of saying plan when and where you'll do your habit. Instead of saying, I'll exercise more, say, I'll go for a 20-minute walk at 7 a.m. right after I wake up. Research shows that people who make specific plans are far more likely to follow through. Fourth, for breaking bad habits, change your context and routine. If your bad habit is triggered by a certain cue, like snacking while watching TV, try rearranging your evening routine. Swap TV time for a walk, or keep your hands busy with a puzzle or knitting. The less you expose yourself to the cue, the easier it is to avoid the routine. Fifth, practice self-compassion. Habit change is hard, and setbacks are normal. In fact, Dr. Wendy Wood, a leading habit researcher at USC, found that people who are kind to themselves after a slip-up are much more likely to get back on track than those who beat themselves up. So, if you have a rough day, acknowledge it, forgive yourself, and recommit tomorrow. Finally, enlist social support. Tell a friend or join a community that's working towards the same goal. Even sharing your progress on social media can create accountability and encouragement. Let's recap the big ideas from today's episode. Habits are automatic behaviors shaped by cues and rewards, and encoded deep in our brains. Breaking bad habits isn't about white-knuckling your way through. It's about disrupting the habit loop and creating new routines that satisfy the same reward. Building good habits is about making cues obvious, rewards satisfying, and tying your actions to your sense of identity. And remember, real, lasting change takes time and patience. So, as you go about your week, I encourage you to think about one habit you'd like to change. Just one. Get curious about your cues and rewards and experiment with a new routine. Remember, you're not just changing your behavior, you're shaping your identity and ultimately your future. Thank you so much for joining me on Intelligent Pod today. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps others find the show. For detailed show notes and links to the research I mentioned, visit IntelligentPod.com. And if you have questions, stories, or feedback, I'd absolutely love to hear from you. You can email me anytime at sophie@intelligentpod.com. Until next time, I'm Sophie Lane. Here's to building the habits that build the life you want. Take care, and I'll see you soon on Intelligent Pod.